Hey folks, welcome to another edition of My Car Guru. Today we are doing a home edition because I am at home and trying out this new microphone. This is my second time, and the last time it cut out for some reason or another. So I'm hoping for the best. But I want to tell you about my new garage. So as a car collector, which I don't have enough room. And I've got several cars in the showroom at Gateway. And let me rephrase that. I am a car investor, not a car collector. I use cars like a lot of people use Apple stock or IBM stock or something like that. I buy cars that I feel like are going to appreciate in value instead of putting it into a 401k. Well, I mean, I have a 401k, but this is just something that I have been successful at. I've lost a few times, but I mean, if I was in the stock market, I'd lose a few times too. And this way I get to drive them and I get to look at them and sit in them and they get to break down on me, which that's the unpleasant side of things. But I need a new garage. My wife is claiming the upper garage. We have an upper and a lower garage in our house. The upper garage was when we first built the house in 1994. We had a two-car garage, and that was fine. But then I got out of hand, and I needed some place to put some of these other vehicles and my tractor and stuff like that. So I had 3 more garages downstairs, and now they're full. Well, I need a new garage. So I have been really going through this. Well, it started off as a barn, but I have morphed from a barn to the more practical thing. See, this is what you do when you think about it. You put a lot of thought into it. You drag it out. You wear your wife's patience out. And then you finally make a decision. So I made my final decision today. I started with a barn. It was going to be 24 by 40. Now it's a garage that's 36 by 60. And it has 5 garage doors. The doors are 9 by 9. And I can get my tractor in it and leave the front loader and a bush hog on the back of it. I can put my 28-foot-long car hauler in it and a couple more cars bumper to bumper. So, and I could put my stuff. My wife pretty much wants me to clear totally out of the upper garage. She wants to deal with plants and stuff like that up there, which she's very good at. And I am totally happy with that because one of my number one priorities. How about that? One of my top priorities is to keep her happy, and because she does such a great job keeping me happy, and she is 100% behind this new garage. Isn't that weird? That just doesn't seem normal for a woman to be behind something like that, but she is. Probably because I redid our bathroom and didn't complain about that. So this is kind of a long story, but I started off with this one company. Well, it's a company called J.D. Metals in Limestone, Tennessee. They build pretty incredible structures. They are the quality provider around here. But I didn't want to spend that much money, and so I backed off and started looking at these companies that are in the distance, like 2 of them over in North Carolina. One is called Steelcraft, and the other is called Grizzly. And all their pricing was very attractive, no doubt about it. But the more I talked to them, the less comfortable I felt. I started thinking about, okay, Leonard, what are you getting for your money? Now, regardless of what I put up, they will outlive me. So, is it a question of budget? Not really. I just want to make sure that I get what I want, I'm going to be happy with. And I want to have the space. And, when I go down there and open the door, and if I slam the door and the whole building rattles, I'm not going to be happy. So quality is important. This is exactly what I was talking about yesterday when people settle. And sometimes we jump too quickly. Other times we settle. And so both of those, I think, are tremendous mistakes that we make with our money. So also, since this is going to be a garage, it will not be close to my house and I won't be able to see it. I'm putting it behind a tree line. in the other field because I really don't want to see it. I've gotten so used to what I see when I drive up my driveway. And I must admit, I do like some change. Many times they call me the change agent, and I am that. But this is something that I'm just not going to feel comfortable with if I see it because it's a garage and I don't want to see that. So we're putting it in that field, and I'm going to be happy once I get all my cars in it. So that's part of what I wanted to talk about today, not settling, or reemphasize, not settling and not taking the time to think about it. So today I want to talk a little bit about buying mistakes. You bought something. It's a car or a truck or an SUV, and you find out later on that it is not in great shape. Matter of fact, that it's even got salvage history. Or it's been wrecked and you bought it from a new car dealership and it wasn't disclosed. Or it has it was a buyback. You find out that it went through an auction, manufacturer auction, and it had been purchased back from a dissatisfied customer, repaired, and then sent through the auction. Will that brand a title? Will that cause something to be announced by a seller, a dealership? Well, if they're an ethical dealership, they will. But what if you find out about it later? What do you do? How do you handle that situation? Well, I'm going to tell you here in just a minute. It is an awkward situation when you buy something and you really trust the people you bought it from and you get off to such a great start and you're so happy. And then, sometimes people will, after the fact, they may run into a friend and say, well, did you ever pull a Carfax on that thing? And you say, well, no, I didn't. Well, you ought to pull it. And I agree, but you should have pulled it before you bought the car. Because if you pull it after the fact and you've had a used car and you bought it as is, you're stuck in many cases. So my first advice to anyone buying a car is either pull an Experian auto check or pull a Carfax. And you need to see the full report. You really want to know where the car originated, right? I had a guy come by the dealership yesterday. He was driving a Geo Tracker, if you remember what those were. It's really a Suzuki Sidekick, but Chevrolet sold them as Chevrolet Trackers, and then they tried this Geo experiment to try and create an in-house import car line. It was called Geo, and it failed. So anyway, General Motors will never be looked at as an import automaker, although all the vehicles that they sold under the Geo name were imports. The Geo Storm was a little two-door sports car, and it was made by Isuzu. The Geo Tracker was made by Suzuki, and then the Geo Metro, I think it was made by Daihatsu. But anyway, he had this Geo Tracker, but the grill was out of a Suzuki. And I said, let me scan the VIN number on that thing and just see where it came from. I'm curious now because he just loves this vehicle. And it was actually not a Suzuki. It had been wrecked. They'd replaced the Chevrolet or the Geo grill with a Suzuki grill. And it had, because it had Geo hubcaps, but it was a 10-owner car. Would that bother you? The car that you own was owned by 10 other people before you got it? Well, it also showed that it had been wrecked, thus the Suzuki grill, and it had open recalls from 1994. One of them looked pretty serious. Never been done. These are things that you need to know before you buy a car. Now, this guy's a mechanic. Anything that happens, he can probably fix it himself. It's not that big of a deal. But what about you? Of course, I wouldn't recommend you buy a car that old, but any car that you buy, you pull the Carfax first. You see the full report. You see where it originated. Was it a car from up north? We've talked about that because of rust issues. Was it a buyback? Was it repossession? All of these different things. I want to know that before I lay out a bunch of money on a car. So, but let's say you already bought it, though, and you find this out after the fact. Well, when it comes to dealing with these issues, I go by the 3 C's. Don't you just love my acronyms? Number 1, maintain your cool. Please be cordial. That starts with a C. Be nice. Nice folks get treated nicely. You don't go into the dealership raising Cain, even though you've been abused. If you're kind of level-headed, then you're going to control the reactions of the people on the other side of the table. If you elevate too much, then they'll elevate. They'll get defensive. You'll say, you'll start calling them crooks within a few minutes. It's a big mistake because people just don't want to help people who are, being, what. Extremely difficult, let's say. So be cordial. Be businesslike. Be professional, but be cordial. And you don't want to talk to your salesperson, the guy who sold you the car. You want him to introduce you to the general manager of the dealership, not a sales manager. There's a big difference between the two. The sales manager doesn't like to take things back, wants to think about what's ahead of him, not what's behind him, not what he sold 2 months ago or a year ago. That's not their perspective. The general manager is more concerned about the overall reputation of the dealership. Now, that's the general manager. It's better if it's a store that's operated by the dealer principal like I am, like my dealerships are, where the guy who owns the place is there, that's the guy I want to talk to. And sometimes there are people out front that are, their main goal in life is to keep you from getting to that guy, and that's unfortunate. But you can tell that really quickly. A lot of people say, why don't you just call your lawyer? Big mistake. They'll stop talking to you if you get a lawyer because they're just going to get their lawyer. And then they're going to try to slow things down and wear you out. So if you want something done, get to the top guy in the store, okay? Second thing is you need to be calculating. That's another C. Do the research. Understand what the financial impact is of the purchase that you made. So let's say that you bought a vehicle, you thought it had a clean title, you didn't know it had salvage history. Go to a couple other dealerships and ask them what would be the difference in value between this vehicle if it doesn't have a salvage title and now that we know that it does. And get at least 2, but maybe 3 different opinions on that and get them in writing. You've got evidence then. You may go into that business and the general manager says, well, it doesn't really affect the value that much. Well, here's 3 of your competitors that say that it does. And that's just the way that you say it. Again, cordial, keeping that part going. You have to understand the financial impact. How it has to come down to a dollar figure. Now, if you want them to take the vehicle back and put you into something else, then sometimes that's an ideal situation, but it gets complicated, especially if you have a payoff. You finance the vehicle and you have a payoff on the vehicle that you own that has a salvage title. So, a lot of this burden falls on them because they did not disclose it. Part of the burden falls on you because you didn't do what a lot of people do these days and pull the Carfax. You want to be able to trust folks. Doggone it. I understand that. But buyer beware. Be nice, but beware. Okay, what else? Be courageous. Be bold with your expectations. One thing that, most negotiators do is they ask for more than they're willing to take. And that's what you have to do. I mean, you can go in there and say, you guys sold me this vehicle under false pretenses. And I expect you to give me all of my money back on this car and to help me and sell me another vehicle at your cost. And just see what they say. I mean, you've laid it out on the table. The mistake that a lot of people make is they ask for too little up front. They ask for exactly what they need, and that's just negotiation 101. You start with more than you need, and then you work your way down. Now, if you aren't any good at this, this would be a total intimidating situation for you. Then take somebody with you that wouldn't be intimidated. But you got to make sure that they follow the 3 C's as well. I mean, first of all, they have to be cordial. Don't take some hothead in there because he's going to drive a wedge between you and a solution. and you certainly don't want that to happen. Now, are there legal remedies? Well, if fraud was committed, you have to prove it, and that has to be proven in court. Well, what about the lemon law? There is no lemon law when it comes to used vehicles. That only applies to new vehicles in the first 12 months since the original delivery date. Now, and it also only applies to the first owner, so obviously, because it doesn't apply to used vehicles. So, going there screaming lemon law is just exactly like not being calculating. You're not prepared. You're stating stuff that is not true. You don't get your legal advice from Uncle Harry. His only experience is fighting a speeding ticket. That's not what you need. Now, as I always say, one of the ways to have leverage at a car dealership is to do all your business there. Be a loyal customer because they pay attention to that. I mean, if you're going to Jiffy Lube places to get your oil changed, you bought the vehicle there and you've never darkened their door in the last 12 months or 2 years or whatever, then, you're not really a customer. I mean, you were, but you're not now. Maybe you've bought several cars since then, and they're less likely to help. And I think you would understand that. Yes, they did a no-no, but they're more likely to help you if they feel that it's going to cost them long term. And you have power that you didn't have 30, 40 years ago because you have Facebook, Instagram. You also have TikTok if you're so inclined to do videos. I wouldn't recommend that. Don't ever post anything on social media until you've exhausted all of your other possibilities, because that'll shut them down, just like you saying that you want to get a lawyer. You may think that threatening a lawyer would be motivational for them and scare them, but it doesn't, because more than likely they have deep pockets, they have got good attorneys, and they know the law better than you do. And they know that you signed all this paperwork, and when you go to the Sessions Court and they trot out all of this paperwork that you signed, that you bought the vehicle as is, you don't have a leg to stand on. And so don't put yourself in that losing position. Follow the 3 C's. Get something from them based on logic, being nice. You have the numbers. You can prove what they've done. If you're dealing with a human with a little bit of compassion in them, then, they're going to do something. They may not give you all that you want or deserve, but they're going to give you something. Okay, I'll take my last break. I'll be back here in just a minute. Okay, let's talk about a few other defensive moves. One of those moves is to buy a certified used car. What's that, Lenny? Well, that is when a dealership advertises that their used cars are certified to all new car dealers who sell certified used cars. That means that they've gone through a more extensive inspection process, supposedly, and that they come with a warranty. And so they've pulled the Carfax. There's all kinds of extra protections built in for you if you buy a car that's certified. Now, you're going to pay a premium for a certified car. You can take 2 identical Honda Accords. If one's certified, one's not, it's going to be more expensive to be certified. But is it worth it? If it's got clean history, it's completely gone through, more so than supposedly the other car, and it comes with a really good warranty. Now, these warranties on these certified cars, it can run concurrently with the remaining factory warranty, or if the basic factory warranty is gone or expired, then it will go for anywhere from 2 to 3 years beyond that. Certified used cars are very popular. They represent, as far as new car dealers, they represent about 25% of all used vehicle sales are certified. The reason dealers like certified used cars is because there is a greater likelihood that there will be repeat and referral business, and that they'll bring the vehicle back to the dealership for regular service and maintenance. So they like selling certified cars. One critical point to think about when buying a used car is if they tell you that it is still under the factory warranty, then, that's great. It's a great thing to know. But what was the in-service date of the warranty? Because if you don't know that, you don't know when the warranty expires as far as time is concerned. You can look on the odometer and tell when it expires as far as time or mileage is concerned. But you need to know the time as well. You may be looking at a used car and that salesperson says, well, it's still covered under the factory warranty. Oh, well, that's great. But the warranty expires in 2 months. He didn't tell you that part. So whenever you buy a used car, make sure that you know when the warranty expires, and that'll help you decide whether you want to buy some type of extended service contract. And if you're buying a car from a friend, and let's say that they bought an extended warranty, or maybe not a friend, a stranger, and they say, well, I've got this extended warranty protection from General Motors that, can go along with the car. Well, it can, as long as it is transferred to you. It doesn't just, he doesn't just hand you the paperwork and you're covered, because if you take it into the dealership for a covered repair, it's not covered for you, it's covered for the previous owner. And so, you have to pay a transfer fee if the manufacturer allows that. If the manufacturer doesn't allow that, then you're just going to have to forget about that warranty and go buy one at a dealership. Just don't buy one of those that you get a solicitation in the mail. They find out somehow, they go through registrations, and they find out who has bought a vehicle, and then they start pounding them with mail, saying that, your warranty's expired, call us for extended warranty protection. Don't call them, call the dealership, because they're the ones that sell the warranty products that are worth buying, not those other guys. Well, thanks for listening to this edition of My Car Guru. Again, if you have any questions, call me or send me a text, 423-552-2020, or you can send me an email to LennyLawson2020@gmail.com, and I'll see you next time.